Super Rugby, you are back in my good graces after a wonderful weekend of great footy down in the Southern Hemisphere. Let's get into it.
I need all the wins, yeah. Ain't no L's, I gotta get a no call and quits, yeah. Gotta keep on moving no matter how hard.
Here comes Danny Tusizawa, back to Baker, Baker with the fin. Kurt Baker in for DC, and this may well do it old glory with the try. The New Zealand Sevens legend, Kurt Baker with the cherry on top.
Can you believe it?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the On the Line Rugby Podcast, a show brought to you by the Believe Sports Network. I'm your host, Mike Nagaishi, and welcome back. As I said in the cold open, a great fundamental weekend for once. Thank you, Lord. And when it comes to Super Rugby down south, we had a lot of great fundamentals, not only on defense, but on offense as well. Yes, a lot of blocks, but great looks overall. But obviously, you have some glaring, I'm not going to say misnomers, but things we need to work on, things to improve for a lot of these teams looking forward to this week. A lot of things that can be really easily fixable. And I feel like a lot of these are really just confidence issues. But for starters, let's go into what, in my opinion, was one of the better games in probably of the weekend, the Canes versus the Drua. Now, I expected the Drua to really come into this game fired up, ready to defend the homeland, maybe get back at the Canes. I really thought that they had the numbers for it. They really didn't lose anyone. I mean, Frank Lomani is a big loss, don't get me wrong, but all things considered, they have a staple of quality athletes at that 9 position that I really thought could do well. I think the biggest loss for them this week was the unexpected departure of Isaiah Armstrong-Ravula, obviously for family tragedy purposes. So while the team left him in support, they basically put out, I want to say it was a 20-year-old kid who name does miss me at the moment, but they basically had him and Kemu Valentini, who is Rob Valentini's brother, for all of you who don't know, as really the game manager from the 12 spot. I really thought that they looked rattled when the Canes came with their kicking strategy. Obviously, Drua and most Fijians are really well off with the ball in hand. So obviously having them play a game of kick tennis and really focus on the counterattack really stops that game, especially with the Canes' great defense. It held them back very well. They were never really able to get front football. Iosefo Masi really loved the ability to probe the line, but he really couldn't find a lot of holes. That slide cover defense was insane. I definitely think that there was another thing that the Drua did interestingly that I thought could have worked but didn't because it was easily countered. If you look at most of the game's scrums, they lock a lot of their back rowers, I think, except for the 8-man. And I think some of them actually did include locking in the 8-man into the scrum to really slow down that Tyrell Lomax, big boys in that unit. But that left obviously a lot of deficiencies because obviously when you lock your forwards in to really hold back that really great set piece, you're not going to have the defense when someone does a pick and go or the 9 being able to roll out and set people up. And that happened day in and day out. And really, if you look at where a lot of the tries came down from, it was mostly because of that. If you really were able to unlock at least one of the guys to really be able to freelance, I really think a lot of those tries at least would have been maybe slowed down or at least didn't happen as easily as that. But at least they conceded 2 and not what would have been an average of 5. So, as I said earlier, Kemu Valentini was managing at 12, but I personally didn't think he did that well. He had a lot of kicks that were short, kicks that went into touch. You had passes that were skipping players and into off hands. Really a lot of, I'm not going to say great space management. And then on top of that, just really, really, really bad confidence when it comes to running into the line. I was expecting Valentini to really take over as that running 10 that Armstrong Ravula is been basically patenting for the rest of the Drua's year. His ability to probe the line, maybe not necessarily break it like a Bowden Barrett or a DMAC, but at least be able to test it to keep a lot of that defense from really fanning out to where the rest of their athletes are. And unfortunately, he really didn't do it. I really personally thought that, yes, he was great off the bench in a drop kick, but even his kickoffs were not necessarily the greatest. He also missed a couple kicks from the tee. I really thought that cost them a lot. when it comes to at least aiming to get a bonus point loss. But perhaps it just wasn't a good day. Maybe they need to go back to the drawing board, review a couple things. Obviously, the departure of Armstrong Ravula really did hurt their team really late. So Kim Valentini, I guess props up to you for doing this in such short notice, but we're definitely going to need to look at improvement in that regard moving forward, just because a lot of those points were really avoidable. As for the Canes, I really like their single shooter cover D. For those of you who are watching the visual companion to this podcast, basically what a single shooter cover D is when you shoot off one player, but instead of having all the rest of the players rush up to provide support, you have them slide the cover. So that really eliminates a lot of the ability for an offense to really kind of take advantage of those mismatches and those gaps in the line. And a lot of those single shooters really hit their mark. You're looking at a lot of plays made by Devin Flanders, Isaiah Walker-Leoviri, Brad Shields. Those guys were just hitting up. A lot of the backs are doing the same thing. Josh Morby, great performance at 15 for Ruben Love. You had Aiden Morgan, who by all accounts is a baller for doing this. For those of you who didn't see, he got kind of hit in the face and was bleeding profusely. Comes in looking like Hush from Batman for all my DC Comics fans, and still manages to pull off a great game. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. That single shooter cover D really stopped any sort of front foot ball in terms of the Drew's attack. A lot of the Iosefo Masi balls that I really thought could have went wide open, and they had space on the wing. If you look at the bottom and top of your screen of your replays, if you can get the full game replays, you're going to see that all day, every day. And the Canes just shot up and stopped. It was a great fundamental-wise performance, great communication down the line. Whoever was calling the defense for them, whether it was Brad Shields, Jordy Barrett, props up to you because you guys did great. And I really think that officiating was a really interesting downgrade in this game and compared to most of the games this weekend. If you look at dangerous foul play penalties, there was obviously a big thing over the TMO and Tavita and Canaveri always asking for a review of plays. And as captain, I feel like you're more than happy to talk to the ref and throw that out there. But personally, I probably would have called a lot of those plays. I think they missed a lot of tackles specifically on him when it's close to the line as high a ball, not really attempting to wrap, not getting the body low, shoulder encountering with the head and neck area. You really could have went there, and I'm surprised they didn't. Paul Williams, I'm not sure if Chris Hart, the TMO, was really into just calling that, but I thought it was the evidence was there enough to at least get that going. I just don't understand it. I really think that between that and with the Drew getting essentially booked in this game with 13 men on the field with 2 yellow cards late, they really should have had a shot. It was just penalties late, and it really could have at least given them a bonus point loss. But I guess, obviously the franticness of Fijians really throw it out there to really make those broken plays. But as we all know, franticness leads to a lot of really painful mistakes that really could be avoidable. But it shouldn't have gotten that far because the Canes also did. I'm not going to absolve them, but a few, mismanageable mistakes, especially not just in the high tackle margin. If we look at the rest of this game, holistically, I think the biggest thing would be the loss of Asafo Aumua. That did not look good. I'm pretty sure it was an high ankle sprain at best, but that could be catastrophic to the Canes' offensive attack. Obviously, Asafo Aumua is one of those freaks of nature. We've seen him over the last couple weeks really break into the game and give a lot of life into this Canes side that, with Dane Coles gone, needed that athletic hooker presence to really be able to truck fools, keep the ball moving, and his ability at set piece was outstanding. I really don't know how they're going to fill that role. He'll at least probably be out for 4 to 6 weeks at minimum, if that's the case. So you're in for a rough ride, Canes. You really got to nut up and strap up and get in there, because let me tell you, it's going to be an interesting play to play the rest of New Zealand without Asafo Aumua, who is a linchpin in your attack. If you look at the Reds game, I personally wasn't very impressed. I thought it was an absolute cluster out there with knocks and stupid plays galore versus the Landers. Oh, I don't know, man. Like I can only watch these painful games so much, and it was bad. I really thought the Reds were going to clean this game out, and it just didn't happen at any point of fashion. I've a lot of your praise is Tom Lina, and you looked so confused and lacked confidence. Whether it was that missed pass to Harry Wilson in the 11th minute that arguably should have just been a hit up, or your ability to just chain in a grub or manage the space in the backfield. It was not good. What happened to you? That's something that we need to really look into. Tom Lina, I argued next to JOC was probably the best option that they had at 10, and I don't really know now. I really hope JOC comes back because this team is looking lost. But in the back line, they were meh outside of Hunter Paisami. By the way, a little preview. Shout out to him. His IQ ability with the loss of Jordan Pataya early to that shoulder injury, which looks really bad, by the way. They're looking at it possibly being a dislocated shoulder that is obviously at least going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks, and possibly a shoulder reconstruction that will kill his season for this year. And for Jordan Pataya, who was, I think, his first couple games back at center, I like him more at 15 personally, but that's just me. Jock Campbell at 15 was a unit, though, out there. But I think putting him in those defensive positions, it was just a bang-bang play. It really wasn't anything intentional. But I think he's better off managing that 15 role and putting Jock Campbell in at 12. I think he's just too fragile. And he's always had a lingering shoulder issue. I think the Reds have been plagued by this all year. You look at Josh Fluke, who had the similar injury. It's not a good time for them right now. But outside of their woes in the back line, their forwards were great. The Highlanders at one point were considered one of the better teams at set piece, especially at scrums, obviously with Ethan DeGroot, Jerome Ainsley, and, Billy Harmon and company. And surprisingly, the Reds managed to destroy them in every sense of the word. Penny Ravai and Jeff Tamuga Allen, props up to you and Matty Fessler, because let me tell you, that was an amazing textbook performance as a front row on all facets, in scrums and lineouts. It was beautiful. And as a forward myself, I hats off to you, my boy. Hats off to you, because that was beautiful. To push around Ethan DeGroot and Jermaine Ainsley like that, it is a feat. And especially with the lineup that you had with Penny Ravai, you're missing Taniela Tupou the entirety of the year because he's in Melbourne. That was beautiful. And I expect to see that the rest of the year. You guys have a great unit when you want to, and especially when healthy, you guys are dangerous. You guys need to just bring your best foot forward in the park. I don't understand it. Tom Lina, you are one of the better 10s in Australia, at least up and coming. Please fix those discrepancies, and the team will be fine. Everything will be great. But that's going to be doing it for me for that game. I really didn't have a lot of takeaways. Same thing, likewise, with the Blues. That was just a blowout. It was really hard to get any good gleaming things that I think no one else could really see. But these are the two things that really stuck out to me. I really thought the Blues looked anemic for the first 6 minutes, but obviously they got really explosive off the back of Caleb Clark and Papali'i throughout the set piece, getting that ball out wide. Papali'i just banging out clean breaks through the defensive line. That was beautiful. I just don't think that the Brumbies were prepared to just be constantly running on the back foot. They constantly looked like they were walking backwards and not really prepared for that front foot ball. They didn't really look as aggressive on defense, and their line speed was kind of possibly just because they take up the space. But even then, you didn't do that great because you had Caleb Clark ripping you a new one on the sideline, and then you had Mark Talea, who, by all intents and purposes, in my personal opinion, did not really do that much in this game. But in the fantasy margin, obviously he did go off, and that's mostly because of the two big line breaks that he had going on the field. But if you're looking at it from a real life eye test perspective, he really didn't do that much, and you let Caleb Clark destroy you. So I obviously think that the Blues pressure with tight pop-up ball and just quick carry, and obviously carry efficiency, they were never going behind the game line or at the game line. They were always breaking at least a couple meters past, constantly moving them off the back foot, which obviously set up guys like Caleb Clark, set up guys like Papali'i. Tutu, obviously a great explosive runner through this game to really stop and kill the Brumbies defensive flow. And their crumbles from tackling too high and going backward, I really think destroyed their confidence. And the entirety of this game was staged on that. So when you look at it, Blues, very clinical job. Brumbies, I don't know what happened to you. Get better. You guys were the best team in Australia. I was really expecting Lola Silva to stand out, but, I guess woe is me in my fantasy performance because you didn't do nothing all game. I was very disappointed. As for, in my opinion, was probably one of the more interesting games of this week. You have the Satyrs versus the Western Force. I was not expecting the Force with Kurtley Beale to do that kind of damage to the Satyrs in that regard. Kurtley Beale, obviously everyone knows, Wallaby legend, Waratah legend, the Israel Folau, all that controversy and them on the field was impeccable. That obviously ended with Izzy's controversy and then Kurtley's controversy, which we're not going to talk about here because I like advertisers. But I guess if you could go either way, he beat the allegation or he's a great lawyer somewhere down the line. Whatever it may be, guys back on the field and showing up and showing out. And, for being a year off the pitch, he really did a number to them. The Force, I think, walked over the Satyrs from the start. Whether it's Ben Donaldson, you're looking at Hamish Stewart at 12, who arguably I would say was the 10 for this game over Ben Donaldson. The list goes on and on. It was just great. For them to be 80% of 207 tackles made from the start compared to 60% really for the Satyrs, and losing the breakdown battle for them, really costing that game. I thought they were very aggressive. Santiago Madrano and friends were really pressuring them with quick forward ball, pop up, take it in, drive a couple meters with that little double movement, roll back down, pop it up again. Nick White, masterful with the game management, obviously broke open the game with just basic fundamentals, kind of like an Aaron Smith level. I'm not going to say his passing levels were Aaron Smith, but you're not going to see Nick White at this age probing the line. So he better do the rest of the things right, and he really did. Personally, I think the biggest takeaway is, at least for the Force, was putting Beale and Stewart as the primary pivots in this offense, with Beale at 15 and Stewart at 12, allowed Donaldson to really freelance and more back into his element. If you look at what he did with the Waratahs, Ben Donaldson at 15 was mostly essentially there to manage the kick the field, and set up players with running up to the line and then tossing it out wide, which is essentially what he was doing the entirety of the game. If you're looking at management of space and management of the attack, calling plays, getting guys in right positions and playing the ball, it was Kurtley Beale and Hamish Stewart all day. And Hamish Stewart, I was not expecting you to put on a Leinster level performance, but you did, and I'm very impressed with you. Seeing you on this team is really nice to see, and especially with Kurtley Beale looking relatively ageless for his age and putting on a textbook performance against what one would consider at one point one of the better sides, at least developmentally, in Super Rugby is quite impressive. Hats off to you for the coaching staff for coming up with this play sheet. You guys did very well. Obviously for the Satyrs, the Satyrs attack meant a lot of loose carry. There was a lot of knock-ons, really lateral attack, not really being able to get downhill and vertical, and just the inability to exit efficiently from their own space and their own half really killed them. I will say it till the cows come home. Riley Hohempa is not that dude. Put in Rivers Rehana for the rest of the year. Hohempa, you're okay, but you're not like that. Look, you missed a wide open kick off the tee, 20 meters out, not even from the corner. Come on, my dude. We got to do better than that. Then on top of that, you lose Dallas McLeod to a rib injury that looks either bruised or broken. Is definitely a blow to the fill all season. If you're looking at trying to get him ready to at least either get on the wing or get on 12 for the All Blacks, looking at it, he might be out for the rest of at least the Super Rugby season. What are you going to do in terms of development? He's going to need to get into Razors camp and really learn, and that's what's going to help develop him better to help come back to this team next year. And he's arguably one of the younger cornerstones of this team, and you just lost a valuable opportunity for that. Don't know what to say. You're lost. And that's really all the takeaways I can really give you for this week. So let's move on to the team of the week. Obviously, a little preview, as we all like to know. Penny Ravai, Jeff Tamuga Allen obviously got my front row nods. dominant performance. I expect nothing less moving forward. And it was beautiful to see going up against a Highlanders team that I thought would roll them all over the park when it comes to at least set piece play. I thought Ricky Riccatelli earned the number 2 spot. Personally, I would have put Asafo Almua in there. You could argue I could have put Matt Fessler in there, but I thought Riccatelli's ability to really embrace his early Canes days when I was watching him play looked fantastic. His ability off a set piece was amazing to throw accurate, quick ball. His ball carry was amazing, and obviously the scores did help on the stat sheet. I'm not going to lie, okay? So as we move into the second row, I thought this was kind of an open and shut case. I really thought Patrick Tuipulotu being able to call that line out and really take front foot carry ball and on defense be really well at taking in heavy ball carriers that I thought were much bigger than he was to slow them down, at least to get cover defense in, but mostly to take it by himself. Quite impressive. For my number 5, I really battled with this between Ryan Smith and the winner. Obviously, the winner would be Isaiah Roti-Osula from the Drua. I really loved his front foot ball carry. His pick and goes were great. His ability at the breakdown were amazing, and especially at lineout time, he really helped interfere a lot with the Satyrs, although unsuccessful in winning the game. Just really stopping a lot of easy quick ball from that lineout. For my back row, I have them a lot of auto position, but I think this needed to be said. Dalton Papali'i at 6 was a unit. His line breaks all day. Everyone knows he's going to put his head into a dark place and make great plays in the breakdown, but his offensive and defensive play was, I think, some of the best things I've seen in a while. Kitone Salawa from the Drua, I think, earned it. Again, breakdown dominance, ball carry dominance. I think that needs to be said over and over again for him. Hoskins Tutu, I had to put in there at 8, not only just because of the scores, but just his maturity and not just trying to do everything himself. Yes, do I miss the human highlight reel that he was his first 2 years? Yeah, but I mean, I could argue he's a much more matured, much more grounded, and definitely more well-rounded, developed player than what he was early in his career. So all intents and purposes, he needs to be there. TJ Perenara, I think I had to put him at 9. His ability to set up tries for the Canes that game versus the Drua was amazing. I really loved his play. He's looking resurgent. With the loss of Cam Roigard, I really think that the Hurricanes are in good hands. I don't even think really Richard Judd needs to be on the field by the looks of it. I mean, he's a dominant player. As for 10, another really, I didn't expect this to happen, Harry Plummer. When Harry Plummer came in to the Blues and I watched him play for his first couple years, I really thought he was just a game manager with a great kicking leg. He's really proving otherwise. He had stints at 12, 13, a lot of the last few years, but his ability at 10 this time was phenomenal. A lot of his performance off of just passing, running downhill with the ball, great. I'm so happy he's finally developing an aggressive stance at the gain line. And his kicks off the tee, I believe he was 100% off of that. Hats off. Caleb Clark at 11 needs no introduction. Iosefa Masia at 12. He defensively, great. If you're looking at how he tried to really will the team with his probes, great. I had to put him there. Hunter Price-Sami, IQ to really set up guys out wide, ability to take the ball in space, and great defensive carry. Had to put you in there at 13. One could argue this is my most controversial pick at 14, but personally, I could have went for Kurtley Beale, but I feel like it would have been right. I had to put Keenan Oholo there. I love seeing backs, as you know, play forward, and his ability to not only take the ball, probe the line, but also to play defense, hit hard and pound the breakdown, go for turnovers is a beautiful thing to see. More backs need to do it. And Keenan Oholo arguably could have been a loose forward with his size, but with that speed, I really want him out wide. So we have to put him there. For 15, again, could have went with Kurtley Beale, decided to go with Carnegard and Bashop in this game. If you look at one of the few good things the Highlanders did all game was Carnegard and Bashop and his ability to really set up a lot of the ball for the Landers that obviously, got called back or didn't happen because of penalties or turnover. But his ability to just rip open that Reds defense and really was the only guy that had that kind of dominance the entirety of the game needs to be lauded, and he needs to be here. As for my bench, I went with Xavier Numia, James O'Reilly from the Canes, just because of the fact that Well, at least with James O'Reilly, O'Reilly could have scored that try, but I think he was just a little slow. For a new hooker coming onto the field for Asafo Amua, he really, really showed up and showed out. I just think he needs to really work on his speed. But outside of that, he looked great. And offensively, defensively could have used a little bit of work, especially with some high tackle areas with number 2. But that's something you can fix with coaching. As for Numia coming off the bench in 10 minutes to do what he did, great job defensively and especially offensively, just be able to bowl over the game line and really run great support lines and dummies. As for 18, I had Ofatunga Fasi, his dominance against James Slipper and co. on the line. Amazing to see. Defensively, running amok, just calling out plays, setting up the defensive line well. Needed to be in here. 19, I had Devin Flanders. I didn't really have a lot of locks in here, just that I thought really showed up and showed out like that. So I just went with the loose forward that could kind of moonlight as a lock. Flanders on defense was, I think, the highlights. Yes, he scored 2 tries, but if you look at Flanders, his ability to, slow down the drill ball with trying to shoot up and make a play, defensively doing well, and especially on the breakdown. Nothing more I can say. I went with a 4-back bench with this week. So hats off to Hamish Stewart and Kurtley Beale. I've already talked a lot about them. Chafee Hockey at 22. I really thought that he was one of the bright lights that helped not only run with the ball, but also have set up a lot of plays for Sever Reese, for Levi Almua, for Fergus Burke. He was out there showing up and showing out. Great performance by him. Cole Forbes, I think that you could argue I could have put someone else in here, but I think if you look at what Cole Forbes has been doing with as young as he is on the Blues, getting starting time, he's doing great with not only magic space but attacking the line and especially at defense to be able to slow guys down at his size. Props off to you, my boy. As for my final kind of nitbit, I really think that this coaching class is probably the biggest change for the better in terms of New Zealand rugby. If you look at a lot of the coaches from the previous regime of Ian Foster and Steve Hansen, you have a lot of defensively oriented coaches, set-piece oriented coaches, and some great backs. And that's really what it was really about, in my personal opinion. As you move forward through the Ian Foster years, you had a guy like Leon McDonald come into the Blues. He really helped open up the game for them, but really couldn't translate, I think, a lot of that into more concrete, dominating wins given their talent. And if you look at the rest of the classes outside of him, it wasn't really that great. This year, you have at least a 60% hit rate. Now, obviously, Clark the Moody could go either way with the Landers. I would love to see him do better. I see where he's trying to go with it. Obviously, Jamie Joseph is still the head of operations for them. He will bring in a great culture. He's going to bring in great coaches, recruit great players, sign a lot of quality talent. And I think this team just needs a good 2 to 3 years to rebuild. This is a huge, huge year for the Landers. If you look at the rest of their teams, they're embracing more of an open attack and more innovations on basic defense. If you look at a lot of the innovations in defense in recent years in attack, it's mostly in the Northern Hemisphere, whether it's Leinster, Racing 92, La Rochelle with Ronan O'Gara, Leinster and Leicester with Steve Borthwick and friends. A lot of these teams, and also South Africa, totally forgot about them. But if you look at the rest of them, New Zealand really hasn't, I would say, innovated in that regard. Yes, you had Joe Schmidt last year with the Blues who really opened it up. But arguably outside of that, not really much. It was mostly based off talent, hands down the line attack, and talent. I really love the increased player development across the board for all these teams. I think is obviously due to the diversity of where they have their coaches from. If you look at Clark Laidlaw, coming in from All Black Sevens, you got Vern Cotter coming in from Fiji, who brings a lot of, obviously Fijian flair with ball carrying hand, but also aggressiveness on defense and innovation at the breakdown that the Fijians have been doing for a long time. And obviously great conditioning that helps the Blues stay in games. Amazing. Tano Umaga, I feel like never deserved to really be fired from the Blues. He was given a really junk situation, and he left for the right reasons. And now coaching Moana Pacifica, you can really see where he's going. His player development has been off off the chain. It's been great. Clark the Moody, he's turned a relatively inept Landers team into a semi-competent Landers team, and that's something I have to kind of applaud. Rob Penny, I don't even know how you should have even been hired. I'm not even going to go into that. I can go on a rant for that for a few days, but there's a lot of sleepers in this lineup. If you look at all the coaches, they're only going to be in there for the better, and you look at how Razor's going to improve this team and the All Blacks, New Zealand could be a deadly threat for the next few years to come. And it all starts with their provincial and obviously definitely the grassroots level. And if the provincial comps are that good, it only leads to better things. And this is, I think, what Australia needs to learn. I think obviously Argentina has learned, because they're going to come back and play in Super Rugby. They're going to try to bring the South Africans back in. A reunion for the ages. And what a great time to do it. But that's going to be it for me this week, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next week. Peace.